Our brain is wired to form habits, patterns of thought, and behavior that either propel us forward or hold us back. Understanding what successful people don't do is just as critical as knowing what they do, because every action avoided conserves mental bandwidth, strengthens focus circuits, and optimizes energy for growth. Today, I want to walk you through 10 key things that successful people consciously avoid, not out of luck or talent, but because their brains are trained to eliminate distractions, negative feedback loops, and self-sabotage. This is neuroscience meeting practical wisdom. By rewiring how you don't act, you build the foundation for lasting success. Successful people understand the critical importance of directing their energy and focus toward what they can influence rather than wasting time and mental resources on factors beyond their control. This mindset is fundamental because time and attention are finite resources, and where they are allocated determines the trajectory of one's life and success. The principle behind this is rooted deeply in cognitive science and psychology, particularly in the concept of locus of control, the degree to which individuals believe they have power over the outcomes in their lives. Successful people cultivate an internal locus of control, which means they focus on their own actions, decisions, and responses rather than external circumstances or other people's opinions. One of the reasons this is so powerful is that the brain's neural circuits are designed to conserve energy. When we spend time ruminating about things outside our influence, like uncontrollable events, the behavior of others, or unpredictable outcomes, it triggers stress responses in the brain that impair cognitive function and decision-making. Stress activates the amygdala, the brain's threat detector, which can hijack higher-order thinking in the prefrontal cortex where planning, problem-solving, and self-control reside. This neurological response not only makes us less effective, but also leads to emotional fatigue and a reduction in motivation. By choosing to not invest in uncontrollable factors, successful individuals protect their brain from unnecessary stress, allowing them to maintain clarity and resilience. The habit of focusing on controllable elements enhances proactive behavior. When attention is placed on what can be acted upon, whether it's learning new skills, managing time effectively, building relationships, or adapting strategy, successful people create momentum. This sense of agency is crucial because it fosters confidence and motivation. Instead of feeling paralyzed by uncertainty or external chaos, they recognize the power in small, consistent actions that compound over time. It's this consistent, deliberate engagement with controllable variables that differentiate successful people from those who feel stuck or overwhelmed. Successful individuals also practice what can be called selective attention. They consciously filter out distractions and irrelevant concerns, honing in on goals and priorities. This ability to triage information and emotional responses is not innate but developed through deliberate practice and self-awareness. It involves recognizing when they are caught in unproductive thought loops, such as worrying about market fluctuations they cannot predict or blaming others for setbacks, and then redirecting focus back to their sphere of influence. This redirection is an act of mental discipline that strengthens neural pathways associated with focus and self-regulation. In practical terms, this means successful people invest their time in areas like skill development, strategic planning, relationship building, and health factors where their input yields tangible results. They set clear boundaries to avoid being consumed by external noise or crises beyond their capacity to manage. For example, instead of obsessing over global economic uncertainties or other people's opinions, they ask themselves, what can I do right now to improve my skills? How can I better manage my schedule? Who can I connect with to foster collaboration? These questions keep their efforts grounded in actionable steps. The philosophy of focusing on controllable factors also extends to emotional management. Successful people recognize that while they cannot control every situation, they can control their response to it. This is a fundamental principle in Stoic philosophy and is backed by modern neuroscience. Emotional resilience stems from this realization. By accepting what they cannot change and investing energy in what they can, they avoid emotional exhaustion. This reduces anxiety and builds a mental framework that supports persistence and adaptability. By avoiding fixation on uncontrollable elements, successful people maintain a growth mindset. They view challenges not as insurmountable external obstacles, but as opportunities to learn and adjust their approach. This perspective encourages curiosity and experimentation rather than helplessness. It also prevents the mental trap of victimhood, which can be debilitating and counterproductive. Successful people also use this focus to manage their social interactions effectively. They do not waste time trying to change others who resist change or manipulate outcomes beyond their influence. Instead, they invest in relationships and collaborations where mutual effort and growth are possible. This strategic social investment maximizes their impact and preserves their mental energy. In sum, the refusal to waste time on things outside their control is not about denial or ignorance of reality. It is a conscious, strategic choice grounded in neuroscience, psychology, and practical wisdom. It allows successful individuals to conserve their mental and emotional resources, maintain focus on meaningful actions, foster resilience, and sustain motivation over the long term. This focus on controllability is a cornerstone habit that underpins all other behaviors leading to success. Successful people understand that seeking approval from everyone is not only impossible but also counterproductive to their growth and achievement. This insight is deeply connected to self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and the neuroscience of social behavior. At its core, the desire for approval activates reward centers in the brain, such as the nucleus accumbens, which responds to social validation. While social connection is a fundamental human need, an excessive or misplaced need for approval can lead to compromised values, distracted focus, and a loss of authentic self-expression. The pursuit of universal approval dilutes personal clarity and purpose. Successful individuals recognize that trying to please everyone means sacrificing consistency and decisiveness, which are crucial for progress. When people constantly seek validation from others, their decision-making becomes fragmented because it is influenced by conflicting opinions, expectations, and judgments. This internal conflict creates cognitive dissonance, a state where the brain experiences stress due to holding contradictory beliefs or desires. Cognitive dissonance can diminish mental clarity and reduce the ability to act confidently, leading to hesitation and ineffective leadership. The need for approval often stems from an external locus of control, where individuals measure their self-worth based on others' perceptions. This external dependence undermines resilience because it ties emotional well-being to unpredictable external factors. Successful people cultivate an internal locus of control, grounding their self-esteem and confidence in their values, goals, and effort. This internal framework enables them to weather criticism, rejection, or disapproval without losing momentum or self-belief. It also frees them to innovate and take risks because their actions are not contingent on universal acceptance. On a neurological level, the brain's social circuitry is highly sensitive to rejection and acceptance, which evolved to keep humans connected in groups for survival. However, in modern complex social environments, this sensitivity can become a vulnerability if unchecked. Successful people develop strategies to manage this by building emotional regulation skills, such as mindfulness and cognitive reframing. These tools allow them to acknowledge social feedback without becoming emotionally hijacked or overly reactive. Instead of reacting impulsively to criticism or praise, they analyze feedback objectively and decide what serves their growth and what does not. Another key factor is understanding that universal approval is a myth. Every person has unique values, beliefs, and preferences, which means that no single decision or behavior can satisfy everyone simultaneously. Successful individuals accept this reality and embrace the fact that disagreement or disapproval is inevitable and sometimes necessary. Discomfort or resistance from others can be a sign that they are challenging norms or pushing boundaries, often a hallmark of innovation and leadership. Rather than being deterred by dissent, they use it as valuable information to refine their approach or reinforce their convictions. This mindset also protects successful people from falling into the trap of people-pleasing, which can lead to burnout, resentment, and loss of authenticity. People-pleasers often overextend themselves trying to meet others' expectations, which depletes their energy and distracts from their own priorities. By setting clear boundaries and prioritizing their vision, successful individuals preserve their resources and maintain alignment with their goals. This approach fosters respect from others because it demonstrates integrity and self-respect. Successful people also understand the importance of selective feedback. They seek input from trusted mentors, advisors, or peers who have their best interest and growth in mind. This selective approach ensures that feedback is constructive and relevant, rather than a cacophony of opinions that can derail focus. It also promotes a growth-oriented environment where criticism is seen as a tool for improvement rather than a threat to identity. Successful individuals leverage self-validation as a powerful internal resource. They cultivate a strong sense of self by regularly reflecting on their achievements, values, and progress. This habit strengthens neural pathways associated with self-efficacy and confidence, reinforcing positive self-belief even in the face of external doubts. Self-validation helps them stay motivated and focused, enabling them to push through challenges without being swayed by the need for external affirmation. In relationships and leadership, this principle translates into authentic communication and influence. Successful people communicate their values and decisions clearly without excessive concern about universal approval. This authenticity builds trust and attracts like-minded collaborators who share their vision and drive. It also enables them to lead with conviction, inspiring others through example rather than appeasement. In summary, avoiding the trap of seeking approval from everyone is a deliberate and strategic choice grounded in neuroscience, psychology, and practical wisdom. It protects mental clarity, emotional resilience, and authenticity, all of which are essential components of lasting success. This mindset empowers individuals to make confident decisions, innovate fearlessly, and build meaningful relationships based on mutual respect and shared values. Successful people understand that procrastination and indecision are among the greatest obstacles to progress and achievement. At the neurological level, these behaviors are often rooted in how the brain processes fear, uncertainty, and reward. Procrastination is not simply about poor time management. It often reflects an underlying avoidance mechanism driven by anxiety, perfectionism, or fear of failure. Indecision, similarly, emerges when the brain's prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive functions such as planning, evaluating options, and decision-making, is overwhelmed by competing inputs or emotional stress. Recognizing these patterns allows successful individuals to develop strategies that enable consistent action despite uncertainty or discomfort. One fundamental reason procrastination takes hold is that the brain's limbic system, which governs emotions and reward, can overpower the rational prefrontal cortex when faced with tasks perceived as difficult, boring, or risky. This creates a feedback loop where avoidance temporarily reduces stress, providing short-term relief but reinforcing long-term delays. Successful people break this loop by consciously shifting their focus from the discomfort of the task to the benefits of completion and growth. They engage in cognitive reframing, reminding themselves that action, even imperfect action, produces forward momentum and neural reward, whereas inaction breeds stagnation and increased anxiety. Indecision often stems from the brain's natural aversion to uncertainty and potential loss, a phenomenon deeply connected to the concept of loss aversion in behavioral economics. The fear of making the wrong choice can cause paralysis, where overanalyzing options leads to opportunities. Successful people understand that no decision is ever perfectly risk-free, and that delaying decisions often carries a higher cost than making a timely, informed choice. This perspective shifts the emphasis from perfection to progress. By prioritizing good enough decisions supported by available information, they maintain momentum and adaptability. Another key strategy is breaking down large, daunting tasks into smaller, manageable steps. This approach reduces cognitive overload and mitigates the intimidation factor that triggers procrastination and indecision. Neurologically, achieving small wins activates the brain's dopamine system, reinforcing motivation and creating a positive feedback loop that encourages continued effort. Successful individuals design their workflows to capitalize on this principle, using deliberate microactions to build confidence and maintain consistent progress. Successful people also cultivate self-awareness about their procrastination triggers. These can include emotional states like fear of failure, perfectionism, or even underlying fatigue and burnout. By recognizing these internal cues early, they can implement coping strategies such as mindfulness, time blocking, or accountability partnerships. Mindfulness practices, for example, strengthen the prefrontal cortex's regulation over impulsive avoidance behaviors by enhancing present moment awareness and emotional regulation. Time blocking helps create structured environments where focus is prioritized, reducing the temptation to delay tasks. Accountability partners add an external source of motivation and social reinforcement, increasing follow-through. Successful individuals embrace discomfort as a natural and necessary part of growth. Rather than avoiding tasks that provoke unease, they view discomfort as a signal that they are moving beyond their comfort zone, a critical space for learning and development. This mindset shift reduces the emotional resistance that fuels procrastination and indecision. It also rewires neural circuits by associating challenge with opportunity rather than threat, promoting resilience and sustained effort. Successful people also manage their environment to minimize distractions and temptations that enable procrastination. They create spaces optimized for focus, free from unnecessary stimuli that compete for attention. This environmental control supports the brain's executive functions and conserves mental energy for decision-making and task execution. Tools like digital detoxes, scheduled breaks, and prioritized task lists help maintain this environment and reinforce disciplined habits. They adopt a future-oriented mindset, focusing on long-term goals and the cumulative impact of consistent action. This perspective helps override the brain's default preference for immediate gratification, which often underlies procrastination. By connecting daily actions to meaningful outcomes, successful people tap into deeper intrinsic motivation, making it easier to start and sustain effort even on less enjoyable tasks. In summary, overcoming procrastination and indecision involves understanding the brain's reward and fear systems, developing strategies to reframe discomfort, breaking tasks into manageable steps, cultivating self-awareness, managing the environment, and maintaining a future-oriented mindset. These approaches empower successful people to act decisively and consistently, accelerating their progress and enhancing their ability to achieve their goals. Successful people recognize that dwelling on past failures is one of the most counterproductive habits that can hinder growth and achievement. This understanding is deeply rooted in both psychological research and neuroscience, which reveal how persistent focus on past mistakes can impair mental function, emotional well-being, and motivation. The brain's natural tendency toward negativity bias means that negative experiences, especially failures, are often processed more intensely and remembered more vividly than positive ones. While this bias served an evolutionary purpose for survival, in modern contexts it can trap individuals in cycles of regret and rumination, preventing forward momentum. When people fixate on past failures, the brain's default mode network, DM, becomes overly active. This network is associated with self-referential thinking and mind-wandering, but can also fuel repetitive negative thoughts. Prolonged activation of the DIM in relation to failures leads to rumination, a maladaptive pattern where the mind continuously replays negative events without moving toward problem solving or acceptance. This cycle exacerbates feelings of helplessness, lowers self-esteem, and increases the risk of anxiety and depression. Successful individuals develop the discipline to interrupt these patterns by shifting attention to constructive thoughts and present-focused actions. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize and form new neural connections, is a key concept that successful people leverage to overcome the pull of past failures. Instead of reinforcing negative neural pathways by dwelling on mistakes, they intentionally cultivate new thought patterns centered on learning and growth. This rewiring requires conscious effort, such as practicing gratitude, self-compassion, and reframing failures as valuable lessons rather than defining moments. This mindset supports a growth orientation where setbacks are seen as temporary and informative rather than permanent barriers. Successful people also understand that failure is an inevitable part of any ambitious journey. They normalize failure as a natural step toward mastery and innovation. This acceptance reduces the emotional charge associated with failure, making it easier to recover and refocus. Psychologically, this aligns with the concept of resilience, the capacity to bounce back from adversity. Resilience is strengthened by cultivating optimism, maintaining a sense of purpose, and developing problem-solving skills. When failures are reframed as feedback, successful individuals use them as data points to adjust strategies and improve future outcomes. Another reason successful people avoid dwelling on past failures is the impact on motivation. Persistent rumination depletes mental energy and narrows focus, which can lead to procrastination or avoidance behaviors. This creates a paradox where fear of failure leads to inaction, increasing the likelihood of repeated mistakes. By contrast, focusing on the present and future possibilities energizes the brain's reward system, particularly dopamine pathways, which reinforce motivation and goal-directed behavior. This neurochemical shift encourages proactive engagement rather than withdrawal. Emotional regulation plays a critical role in managing responses to past failures. Successful individuals develop skills such as mindfulness, cognitive reframing, and emotional acceptance to handle negative emotions without becoming overwhelmed. Mindfulness trains the brain to observe thoughts and feelings non-judgmentally, reducing the tendency to become entangled in negative narratives. Cognitive reframing involves consciously altering the meaning attributed to a failure, transforming it from a source of shame into an opportunity for growth. Emotional acceptance acknowledges the discomfort without resistance, preventing escalation into rumination or avoidance. Successful people also focus on actionable steps rather than abstract regret. They redirect their energy towards setting new goals, building skills, and creating positive habits. This forward-focused approach engages the prefrontal cortex, the brain's center for planning and executive function, strengthening neural circuits that support deliberate and strategic action. By concentrating on what can be controlled and influenced now, they reduce the emotional weight of past failures. Social support is another factor that helps successful individuals move beyond past failures. Sharing experiences with trusted mentors, peers, or coaches provides perspective, encouragement, and constructive feedback. This social connection activates oxytocin release, which promotes feelings of safety and trust, counteracting the stress responses triggered by negative memories. Supportive relationships foster accountability and reinforce a growth mindset by modeling resilience and persistence. Successful people integrate failure experiences into their personal narratives in empowering ways. They view their journeys as stories of overcoming obstacles, which bolsters identity and self-efficacy. This narrative construction helps the brain organize experiences coherently, reducing cognitive dissonance and strengthening confidence. It also prepares the individual to face future challenges with greater psychological resources. In sum, avoiding dwelling on past failures involves recognizing the brain's tendencies toward negativity, interrupting rumination cycles, cultivating neuroplasticity through growth-focused thinking, normalizing failure, regulating emotions, taking constructive action, leveraging social support, and shaping empowering personal narratives. These strategies enable successful individuals to maintain mental clarity, emotional resilience, and motivation essential for ongoing achievement. Successful people understand that surrounding themselves with negative influences is a fundamental barrier to growth, productivity, and fulfillment. This awareness stems from a deep understanding of the powerful impact that social environments and relationships have on mental states, behavior, and neurological functioning. The brain is highly susceptible to social cues and emotional contagion processes through which moods and behaviors can spread between individuals. When surrounded by negativity, pessimism, or toxic attitudes, these detrimental states can infiltrate one's mindset, reducing motivation, increasing stress, and impairing decision-making. From a neuroscience perspective, mirror neurons play a critical role in this social influence. These specialized brain cells fire both when a person performs an action and when they observe someone else performing the same action. This mechanism enables empathy and social learning, but also makes individuals vulnerable to adopting the emotional and behavioral patterns of those around them. Negative influences can therefore create a feedback loop of reinforced negative thought patterns and behaviors that become deeply ingrained, making it increasingly difficult to maintain a positive, focused, and resilient mindset. Successful individuals are selective about the company they keep because they recognize the importance of nurturing environments that elevate rather than drain them. Positive social interactions stimulate the release of neurotransmitters such as dopamine and oxytocin, which promote feelings of pleasure, trust, and bonding. These neurochemical rewards not only enhance emotional well-being but also improve cognitive function, creativity, and stress resilience. By contrast, toxic relationships often increase cortisol levels, the brain's primary stress hormone, leading to chronic stress that impairs memory, focus, and immune function. This understanding drives successful people to actively distance themselves from toxic or unsupportive relationships. This distancing is not merely about avoiding conflict or discomfort, it is a strategic choice to protect their mental and emotional resources. Toxic influences often manifest as chronic negativity, manipulation, jealousy, or draining demands that sap energy and distract from meaningful goals. Maintaining boundaries around such influences is essential for preserving clarity, motivation, and momentum. In addition to limiting exposure to negativity, successful individuals cultivate a circle composed of mentors, peers, and friends who inspire growth, accountability, and constructive feedback. These positive relationships provide not only encouragement but also challenge and honest reflection, creating a dynamic environment that fosters continuous improvement. Social neuroscience research highlights that such supportive networks activate reward pathways and reduce feelings of isolation, contributing to enhanced psychological resilience and sustained motivation. Another critical aspect is the impact of negative influences on belief systems and self-perception. When surrounded by people who doubt, criticize, or undermine ambitions, it becomes easier to internalize those limiting beliefs. This internalization can alter neural pathways related to self-efficacy and confidence, weakening one's sense of capability and increasing vulnerability to self-doubt and imposter syndrome. Successful people consciously protect their belief systems by seeking out positive reinforcement and reframing negative feedback as constructive learning opportunities rather than personal attacks. Successful individuals also recognize that changing their social environment is a proactive form of self-care and personal development. This change may involve creating physical spaces that support focus and inspiration or seeking communities aligned with their values and aspirations. Immersing themselves in growth-oriented groups accelerates learning and opens opportunities that might not arise in less supportive settings. This intentional environmental design supports neuroplasticity by fostering new, positive neural connections associated with optimism, creativity, and determination. Successful people are aware that the influence of negativity is not always overt or intentional. Subtle dynamics, such as passive pessimism, gossip, or unspoken doubts, can create a toxic atmosphere that undermines morale and productivity. By developing emotional intelligence and social awareness, they detect and address these subtle influences early, preventing their escalation. This vigilance helps maintain a culture of positivity and respect both personally and professionally. Finally, successful individuals understand that maintaining positivity amidst negativity requires ongoing effort and resilience. They engage in regular practices such as gratitude, mindfulness, and visualization to reinforce positive neural pathways and counterbalance negative inputs. These practices strengthen the brain's capacity for emotional regulation, allowing them to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively to negative influences. In summary, avoiding negative influences involves understanding the neurobiological mechanisms of social contagion, selectively curating supportive relationships, protecting belief systems, proactively designing environments, developing emotional intelligence, and cultivating resilience practices. These strategies empower successful people to sustain mental clarity, emotional health, and motivation critical for achieving their highest potential. Successful people recognize that neglecting their physical and mental health is a crucial mistake that can undermine long-term achievement and well-being. They understand that optimal performance is deeply connected to how well they care for their bodies and minds, and they approach health as a foundational pillar rather than an afterthought. This perspective is supported by extensive research in neuroscience, physiology, and psychology, all of which highlight the intricate links between health habits, brain function, and productivity. At the core, the brain requires proper nutrition, rest, and movement to operate efficiently. When individuals neglect these essentials, cognitive functions such as memory, attention, and decision-making suffer. For example, sleep deprivation impairs the prefrontal cortex, which governs executive functions including planning, impulse control, and emotional regulation. Without adequate rest, people experience decreased alertness, slower reaction times, and heightened susceptibility to stress and mood disorders. Successful individuals prioritize sleep hygiene, recognizing that restorative sleep not only consolidates learning and memory but also replenishes emotional resilience necessary for handling daily challenges. Nutrition is another vital factor. The brain consumes about 20% of the body's energy, and the quality of fuel it receives profoundly impacts its performance. Diets rich in processed foods, sugars, and unhealthy fats contribute to inflammation and oxidative stress, which can damage neural structures and impair neurotransmitter production. Successful people focus on balanced diets that include omega-3 fatty acids, antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals that support neuroplasticity and cognitive agility. Proper hydration is also critical, as even mild dehydration can diminish concentration and mental clarity. Physical activity is equally essential as it stimulates neurogenesis, the creation of new neurons, particularly in the hippocampus, a brain area central to learning and memory. Exercise promotes the release of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BENF, a protein that supports neuron survival and growth, enhancing cognitive flexibility and resilience. Moreover, regular movement reduces stress hormones like cortisol and increases endorphins and serotonin, improving mood and reducing anxiety. Successful people incorporate consistent physical exercise into their routines, not just for physical health, but for its profound mental benefits, understanding that a healthy body supports a sharp and adaptable mind. Mental health care is another critical dimension often overlooked. Chronic stress, anxiety, and depression can impair brain function, motivation, and interpersonal relationships. Successful individuals proactively manage stress through practices such as mindfulness meditation, deep breathing exercises, and journaling, which have been shown to reduce amygdala reactivity and strengthen prefrontal control over emotional responses. These techniques help maintain emotional balance and clarity under pressure, allowing for more deliberate and effective action. Successful people also recognize the importance of regular mental breaks and leisure activities for cognitive restoration. The brain requires downtime to process information, consolidate memories, and reset attentional resources. Engaging in hobbies, spending time in nature, or simply unplugging from digital devices supports this recovery process. Overworking without adequate rest leads to burnout, characterized by exhaustion, cynicism, and reduced efficacy. By scheduling deliberate rest periods, successful individuals prevent burnout and sustain long-term productivity. They also understand the impact of substance use on health and performance. Excessive consumption of alcohol, caffeine, or recreational drugs can disrupt sleep, alter neurotransmitter balance, and impair judgment. Successful people are mindful of their intake and often adopt moderation or abstinence to maintain peak cognitive and physical condition. This conscious approach to substances reinforces self-discipline and supports a lifestyle conducive to sustained achievement. Another critical aspect is the role of social connections in health. Strong relationships provide emotional support, reduce stress, and promote longevity. Successful people cultivate meaningful connections that nourish both mental and physical health. Positive social interactions release oxytocin, which counters stress responses and enhances feelings of safety and belonging. These relationships act as buffers against the negative effects of stress and contribute to overall well-being. Finally, successful people engage in continuous self-monitoring and adjustment of their health habits. They listen attentively to their bodies and minds, recognizing early signs of fatigue, stress, or imbalance. This awareness allows them to make timely interventions such as adjusting workloads, seeking professional support, or modifying lifestyle choices. They view health as a dynamic process requiring ongoing care and adaptation to maintain optimal function. In summary, neglecting physical and mental health compromises brain function, emotional regulation, motivation, and overall performance. Successful people prioritize sleep, nutrition, exercise, mental health care, rest, moderation in substance use, social connection, and self-awareness to sustain their well-being and maximize their potential.